everyone, welcome back to Shop Life. In this video, I'm going to be talking about something that is not addressed very often, which is being a young business owner and at that being a young mechanic. So I want to talk about how it's been for me in terms of my personal life, interacting with other professionals in the industry, as well as even, building relationships with my clients. So a little bit about me is I'm 22 years old. I just actually turned 22 a couple months back, and I've been working on cars for approximately 5 years. I don't have any sort of background in cars. None of my family was into cars or anything like that. But I have a whole separate video that goes into detail on how I got into cars. So make sure you go check that out. It'll be linked down below in the description. But anyways, let me give a little brief synopsis of that background so you guys have a little bit of an idea moving forward with the video. So I first opened up a shop when I was 17. This was mainly for me to learn how to work on cars. I was parting out cars and just learning stuff based on taking stuff apart and figuring it out. When I went off to college, I opened up another shop, closed the first one down just because of the whole location thing. And when I was at college, I had the second shop where I was still parting out cars, but doing it on a much more of a massive scale. And then I even eventually opened up a dealership since I was, starting to flip cars, fixing them and reselling them. But then I actually did end up closing the dealership. I also closed the second shop, and then I moved out to California, which is where I'm at right now, Alhambra, California. And this is my third shop, where the primary focus since the beginning has been to run a full-scale service shop. So I've been working on other people's stuff, have had a few projects of my own as well, but mostly, providing a service to a mass amount of people. I haven't had a formal education of any kind to learn how to work on cars, which is what I went over in that video. But now you're probably asking, what were you doing in school then? So as far as school goes, I've always had that passion to get some sort of a degree, and before I got into cars, I was doing technology. And when I actually first started out in college, I was doing computer science. But soon after, when I was still trying to run the business and go to school at the same time, everything was clashing, and I was starting to lose focus on my end goal. So I ended up switching into business administration, where I finally got my degree last December in management information systems, which really doesn't have anything to do with cars. Most of the stuff that I learned as part of the business curriculum, I had already learned from firsthand experience. But yeah, all the firsthand experience has always been the way that I've picked up on things. I'm a hands-on learner. I can go to school as much as you want. I'm never going to pick it up unless I'm doing something hands-on. And that's why this route has worked perfectly for me in terms of opening up a shop and parting stuff out to learn. But let me discuss how being a business owner and even a mechanic at that has affected my personal life. So, as you guys already know, if you have went to any sort of school, college or whatnot, it takes up a lot of time. And then being a business owner is more than a full-time job. So having both of those two together, there's already not enough time to be able to do both of those. So there's something else that you have to compromise as well. And most people my age are, all about socializing. And I'm a very social person. But that was one thing that I did have to give up in order to go to school and run the shop. So I don't have a social life, even now. I've graduated, I've been off for about 3 months, and even then I'm still, spending 17, 18 hours out of the day working at the shop, trying to expand my business. So it's safe to say that social life has been out the window. I rarely have time to go out for myself, let alone go hang out with friends. So that's one thing that has been lost in this whole process. But even then, I have been lucky enough to find someone that's been by me through most of this whole process, which is a person behind the camera, my girlfriend. And she's the one that actually got me started on YouTube. She's the one that pushed me to, record myself. And now she even has her own channel, which I'll link down in the description below. She's the reason why I'm able to put up these videos and even help all of you guys out. So make sure you go show her some love. So overall, the main reason my personal life was affected so much was because of having school and the business at the same time. So if you're just trying to become a technician, mechanic, whatnot, that might not happen to you as severely as it did for me, because if you do go the traditional route where you're in school for learning how to work on cars, you're still going to have somewhat of a normal schedule and you'll still be able to socialize and whatnot. But let's keep moving on to how my age has mostly affected the whole business side of my life. So being as young as I am, I'm only 22, and I opened up my first shop when I was 17. And the way I look right now, trust me, I look a lot younger. Without any of this facial hair, I look like I'm a kid. I even put up a picture here so you guys can see how I looked when I first started working on cars. So be sure to go check out my first few videos where I'm wearing scrubs and whatnot. At that time, I was, I think, 19 years old. I've been doing YouTube for about 2.5, 3 years now. So make sure you go check those out. So in the first few videos, I'm 19. So just imagine how I looked when I was 17. A lot younger than that. Another thing that also affects how I look is how skinny I am. So that makes me look even younger, which is also a problem. So let's be real. If you saw me on the street walking around, you wouldn't have a first impression of me as a kind of guy that works on cars or even owns a shop or anything like that. I just look like a normal kid. So for example, back then and even now, I still have issues with getting people to take me seriously. One time when I went to a dealership to pick up some parts for a customer's car, I had to create a wholesale account. They automatically assumed that I wasn't the business owner and I didn't really have any of that information. So they're like already doubting me. They're already looking at me weird. Like there's no way that this kid knows what he's doing and stuff like that. But having those kind of experiences is not something that's uncommon for someone my age that is a business owner. Age is a huge part of any industry. Everybody wants to have someone that has a lot of experience, and that's the biggest thing. You can't have much experience when you're only 20, 21 years old. I mean, how much experience can you really have at that point? I mean, that's not to say that you can't have experience, but just how you look makes a huge difference. That's why a lot of people stress on first impressions. If I go into a dealership wearing what I usually work in, they're obviously gonna think like, what is this dude doing? I'm not the kind of guy that is always dressed up and stuff like that. Another even more recent example is just November of last year. I went to SEMA for the first time, which is a huge convention for the automotive aftermarket in Vegas. And the SEMA show is not something that's open to the public. It's more of it's an exclusive convention for business owners that are in the automotive industry, and more specifically in aftermarket and stuff like that. So most of the people that are there have been in the industry for quite a while. They're a lot older. So while I was at the convention, there's a lot of booths set up for different companies that are trying to market their products and whatnot. So whenever I would go up to a booth, I would always be ignored. I mean, I could probably count on one hand how many times someone actually even spoke with me. What would happen, I would be there, then somebody else would just show up and they would automatically just go to that person. And only people that I even was able to actually speak with was the guys from the Little Trees air fresheners. They had a booth set up. They gave me a few samples. So nobody was willing to take me seriously. Nobody even wanted to approach me in terms of to talk about anything that I was interested in. So you guys get the point. My age has had a huge effect on how I've been able to interact with the industry and the professionals within the industry. And that even goes on with parts suppliers. When I'm trying to get wholesale accounts at other spots, such as distributors and whatnot, I get the same kind of treatment. It's not to say that this always happens, but most of the time that is the case, which for me has not been such a huge problem since I'm pretty confident and I'm pretty outgoing. So I don't let stuff like that put me down. I mean, if anything, it actually feeds my energy to do better, to expand my business, and to learn more and grow. If you're curious as to how I've handled those situations, I've pretty much not let it affect me. I just continue conversation. I'll ask them how their day is, make some kind of small talk. Even, I'm genuinely interested in what they have to say. So I'm trying to, have them look at me as someone that's credible and not someone that, just is a joke. So the key thing is to establish some sort of credibility and try to make a relationship more than, just having them as a one-time thing. Try to make such an impression that they won't be able to forget you, and that way you never get treated like that again from that same person. And one more thing about this industry in general, as far as service goes, there's going to be minimal help that you will receive. It is hard to find another mechanic or technician that is willing to help you become better, which made it really hard for me to, actually learn things from other professionals when I was first starting out. Whenever I had questions in terms of, how to do something, I didn't have that many resources available. Obviously, the internet was there, YouTube was there, but at the time, there were not that many videos as there are now in terms of DIYs and whatnot. But I was lucky enough, I was able to find someone that was also in the business of stripping cars that was able to help me with whenever I had questions. And that's something that I've tried to eliminate with, the whole YouTube channel. That's why I've been making videos. I'm trying to help others that want to learn how to work on cars have some sort of resource that they can use. And that's one of the other reasons why I encourage individuals to message me on Instagram and ask me questions whenever they run into problems. And I try to help out as much as I can. But now let me go ahead and talk about how being young has affected my relationships with clients. I've had people come up to my shop currently where they found me on, a local classified or even like through a parts store that I left my business cards. they will come up here and they'll just be like, are you the only one working here, or is there someone else working? One time in specific, there was a 7 Series that came in for a brake job. They had actually called me before they showed up, and I told them my advice on what they should do in terms of parts and stuff like that, but they wanted to stick to a quote that they had received from another shop, which is in the area as well. But the main reason they were coming to me was because they were being overcharged over there. But once they got here, they automatically assumed that, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. So first thing they asked, they were like, is there anyone else that's going to be working here today? That's probably one of the rudest things that, if you are a young professional, that you will encounter, is clients doubting your ability to actually perform whatever task you're doing, which is a huge downer. But I was able to convert that situation and make them believe that I knew what I was doing. And I did that by having them here at the shop while I was working, which they were over my shoulder the entire time. But even then, I was still talking with them. I was showing them all the stuff throughout the whole process, talking to them and trying to give them information on how all the systems were working and how everything was looking. By the end of that brake job, I can honestly say that I had both of those customers satisfied with the work that I had provided, and they even came back for more work. So just because you run into those kind of situations doesn't mean that you can't convert it into something positive. And I've also even had clients that didn't doubt me at first, but when there was something else that went wrong in their car, they automatically assumed it was my fault. One particular example is a Honda Civic that I worked on once before. I had this customer come in. They found me on Craigslist, I believe. They wanted me to just change out the radiator for them because it was leaking. So when I pulled the radiator off, I told them that there's a bunch of rust in there. Seems like someone put some sort of sealer in there. And I would recommend, changing a lot more of the cooling system out. But they decided not to do that. So I changed the radiator out. About 2 or 3 days later, I receive a call and they're like, hey, my car started overheating again and it's leaking out from somewhere towards the back. But I had only changed the radiator, which was in the front of the car. And I told them that. I'm like, hey, like I told you that there was a lot of sealant and stuff inside the radiator. So when I did flush all that old stuff out, something could have went wrong. And he didn't want to believe that. He started, saying, hey, are you even a mechanic? Do you even know what you're doing? And all this stuff. And I actually had another customer here at the same time. And while I was working on their car, I had them on speaker. And that other customer is actually a subscriber of this channel. So they probably know the whole story as well. And it was really, really rude. But I kept my calm and I kept, reiterating to them that, hey, I didn't mess with anything over there, that more than likely it is a heater hose because that's what's towards the back of the motor. And in the end, he had to get it towed somewhere else because he didn't want to bring it back to the shop. I told him, hey, you could get it towed here, I'll take a look, and if it is something I mess with, I'll take care of it. Which even then, I already knew that more than likely it was something with the heater hose since that was at the back of the engine. And he had the car towed somewhere, and he called me about an hour or two later. He's like, hey, I'm really sorry about, everything that I said. I was just frustrated, and I didn't mean any of that, and all that. And I was like, that's fine. I mean, I wasn't too worried about it anyways. I'm like, it's not a big deal. So then I asked him, did you end up finding out what was wrong? And it was the heater hose. But in the end, he still wanted to come back and get more work done. So even though all these people have some sort of a doubt, when they actually find out that you do know what you're doing, everything does seem to solve itself out. But for most of these situations, confidence is usually the key. But there are always certain situations where you might actually not know what you're doing. And if that does happen, I'd recommend consulting someone else to get another opinion, see what their suggestions are. One thing that you should use as a rule of thumb is only take in jobs that you are 100% confident about. If you don't know something, even if you're iffy about certain situations, do not toy around with a customer's car. Because in the end, if something does go wrong, you're going to be fully liable for it. And that's one thing I've always done, is I've always only taken in jobs that I'm comfortable with. An example for me with that would be transmissions, mainly automatic transmissions. I'm not really familiar with all of the inner workings of the automatic transmission as far as how it's taken apart and put back together. I've never had the time to go around and get to that yet. But eventually, I will do all my research, start tearing a few of them apart, and figure out how everything goes back together. I know the whole general idea of how it works. I'm just not completely confident in taking it apart and putting it back together, or in other terms, rebuilding it for a customer. As many negative situations that I've been placed in, I've had a lot more positive ones. I've had a lot of encouragement, a lot of support, and one of the major reasons for that has primarily been YouTube. There's so many encouraging comments that I get, so many encouraging messages, where people my age and even older ones are thanking me for helping them out and providing them with a resource that they can use so they can learn more about their car. So the overall point of this video is to give you an insight on how it's been for me. And I want to encourage other individuals, whether you're a male, female, young, old, don't let others stop you from growing and learning and doing what you want to do and what you're passionate about. One thing that sets good professionals apart from everyone else is passion. And that's something that you have to make it in this industry. And with that, I'm going to end this video. I know I might have been all over the place, and I'm sorry about that, but there's just so much stuff that I want to say. I really hope this video helps you. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to message me on Instagram at ShopLifeTV. And make sure you go check out all my other videos. The video about my whole background will be linked in the description. Make sure you go check out my girlfriend's channel as well at BMW Selena. And also go check out our vlog channel where we show behind the scenes and our day-to-day lives at the shop.